Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024. My first guest is someone who empowers everyone that takes the time and effort to go to her website, TraderStef, STEF.com, or reads her fantastic articles, or reads her social media posts, or listens to her interviews. She puts you well ahead of the curve. She also has a tremendous amount of experience to, pun intended here, to bank on, and for you to bank on, because of her inside knowledge. Trader Stef initiated a career spanning 14 years within the New York City investment banking industry. She acquired a diverse skill set in human resourcing, technology and communications, training, education and development, business analysis, and global risk. She began investing in precious metals, actually, as far back as 1999. And then she left the banking industry in 2009 after 5 years in global risk management at Citigroup. You can now find her at TraderStef.com. She is one of the top analysts, not just in our country, but in the world when it comes to financial issues as well as geopolitical issues. It's my honor to welcome back our friend, Trader Stef. Stef, welcome back to the Operation Freedom Show and the DaveJanda.com platform.
Dr. Janda, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Unfortunately, Stef, our friends and neighbors to the north in Canada, I believe, are not doing so well. And we're going to talk about what's happening with this life insurance industry bust. But before we get there, talking about a bust, let's talk about the bust of freedom and your take on what's happening in Canada, because the thugocracy, and read that as boy Emperor Justin Trudeau, or as we refer to him as Truck Fudeau on this platform, and his little right-hand thug, Chrystia Freeland, who is a board member of the World Economic Forum, just so happens to be the deputy prime minister. Isn't that interesting? They actually instituted financial measures this week that were beyond authoritarian, where they're talking about and have been confiscating people's bank accounts, cryptocurrencies. Stef, address this, if you could, please, based on your background in the banking industry, because this seems to be, well, the totalitarian genie is well out of the bottle.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. Back in late October of last year, I published an article. It's called Societal Menticide in Hot Bunkers Without a Tradable Stock. And in that article, I said, I suggest to you that the children are the line in the sand. Now, that's what is taking place or developed in Canada with the truckers, because then they were told that, they had to get the jab and the U.S. drivers as well, no matter which side of the border you're from, as you cross over. You can't work if you don't do this. And Canada was the clarion call. And through this process, I would have to say that a turning moment just happened a couple days ago, and that's when the jackboots were pushing out these peaceful protesters in Ottawa, despite the fact that they're all over the place in Canada now, so that they're not ending it with this show of force. But that elderly lady with a walker got trampled by a horse. No, she didn't throw her bicycle at the horse. No. That's what happened. That really set off rage throughout Canada. So Justin's inner fascist has come forward, and it's pretty pathetic. But it's happening around the world, and the United States is about to have, we're going to have our own convoy, and there are some very well-known journalists, including a war correspondent, who are going to be embedded with that convoy. So hang on to your seats, folks. It's going to get interesting over the next few weeks.
Well, and then last night, I've seen something that's now gone viral. Individuals in Canada said, okay, you want to play this game? Let's do this. Trudeau, Freeland, World Economic Forum, and let's face it, it's Klaus Schwab pulling the strings of these totalitarian little thug puppets. They've called for a nationwide work stoppage tomorrow, February 21st. So, Stef, in your background in global risk, and if you will, how do you think this plays out?
Well, then when we get there, it really depends on how many people actually participate, because there's a divisiveness even in the Canadian population. So, but no matter, it's going to have an impact, no doubt. So, pushing the economic button against the fascism that we're seeing, because that's what it is. It's the combination of government, corporate, and now the technocracy all working together. It's classic stuff. We'll see when we get there. It's going to have some type of impact. I mean, look what they did by just shutting down the Ambassador Bridge to the automotive industry in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. So a good friend of mine who is actually well-versed in, how do we want to put this? Well-versed in, I would call it logistic interventions, let's say, said, Dave, if I was running this protest movement, what I would do is I would actually from Atlas Shrugged, I'd have the truckers and as many other industries in Canada pull a galt, if you will, to go on strike, to make it so that say, hey, look, you know what? You don't like us hanging out here. You don't like what we do. You call us just names and you say we're a fringe minority and we're deplorables and I'll tell you, how about this? Trudeau, Freeland, I'll tell you what, we're just going to park our trucks. And maybe we'll even be selective about it. We'll just park our trucks so no deliveries get made to any government facility, any government office, or any corporation that's backing these jab mandates that you seem to love so much. And we'll just see how you can get your supplies and you can get your food and you can get your medicines, and we'll just sit by. Now, Stef, how do you think that would play out?
Be pretty devastating, because you can't fire them because you can't hire enough people back to drive the truck. So just parking it in your driveway for the independent contractors is a go. But in order for it to really have a serious impact, the corporations who have truck fleets who are under pressure are going to have to also do the same thing for it to be a 100% effective shot over the bow to justice.
You there, Stef?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, cut off at the end. So let's go to something that's related, because These protests are related to stuffing down the throat of the Canadian population, the world population, jab mandates. A jab that, well, let's just look at the Prime Minister of Canada. Triple vaxxed, and he just got COVID. The same guy who was saying for many months, if you get the jab, you won't get COVID. You won't get it. Wait a minute. And now, he's little boy emperor for the monarch in England, who he represents, because when he took the oath of office, that's who he swears loyalty to, not the people of Canada. I actually watched his installation, or whatever you want to call it. He swears allegiance to the crown and to the Queen. Well, it just so happens today, good old Queenie. Queenie has a triple vaxxed, isolated from everybody. Well, she has COVID too. So They're pushing, obviously, a failed jab, and that's what this mandate's all about. Yet, when we look at what's happened with the jab, and we look at the life insurance industry, in fact, Stef, and tell me if I'm wrong, the life insurance industry is taking on huge amounts of water because of jab-related adverse events and deaths. Is that a misstatement?
No, you're absolutely correct based on what I've been able to gather thus far. And let me say, I just want to point out to your listeners, go to traderstef.com, and I have a menu page there called Pandemic. And you'll be able to get into these articles and read them, because there's a lot to talk about with regard to this issue. We're not going to be able to cover it. But those articles are January 4th, potential insurance industry bust and bailout over pandemic excess deaths, Part 1 and Part 2. The premeditated manslaughter coordinated at the highest levels. That's from January 12th. And then the most recent, telling the peasants, it's all in your head in misinformation, right, on February 16th. And just a couple days ago, I'm not necessarily a fan of Alex Jones, but who we're going to talk about today is Ed Dow. And he's an analyst that came out of the BlackRock crew and some others that I'll get to. But he gave some really good, concise information, which appeared on February 18th. And that interview is also linked in my articles. So I have a quote from Jim Rickards that he provided me with yesterday. And let me read that to you. He said, insurance industry data is completely non-political. You can debate masks and vaccines all day long, but the debate inevitably bogs down into politics, and people just choose sides and don't listen. So insurance is different. Dead is dead. And I'll add that disabilities are disabilities.
I agree.
You went on to say ratios are ratios. The insurance industry has no political axe to grind, but they lose a ton of money when actual events deviate from actuarial expectations. Their data is also the canary in the coal mine. When trends change, they're among the first to know. With that said, I don't know if anyone's aware, but the FDA had a timeline to release Pfizer's clinical trial data for the mRNA jab, safety and efficacy. They wanted to seal it for 75 years. Well, a judge said starting within 8 months, you need to start publishing the data immediately. That's a big deal. So listen, in my Part 1, I talked about how the deaths, I juxtaposed it against the great financial crisis from 2008 and 2009. And I cited Dr. Malone. He started talking about the One America insurance information, which the key takeaway with that is that there was a record-breaking increase in the pace of death and disability in claims that did not commence until third quarter 21 and fourth quarter 21. What's most important is that it consisted of working age and employed individuals between the ages of 18 and 64 who were employees of companies that were within group life insurance plans. That demographic and client base was subjected to jab mandates. there are no indications that that it's slowing down. But what's really interesting about the data is that they're calling it indirect COVID related. That really doesn't make sense. But before I wrote part two, part one, I never knew who Edward Dowd was. I never heard of the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden he popped up on Steve Bannon's radio show, and I was like, yep, Wall Street's on this, big time. So part two is a really big deal. There are some updates within that article I've already posted that's got that link to his most recent interview I had just mentioned to you. But there's so much involved here with DARPA, Department of Defense, funeral directors, autopsies, pathology. We're to the point where the data is indisputable. But look, Wall Street smart money is acting on this story.
Yep.
Moderna stock is down 69% since August of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Pfizer's is down 21% since this past December. Smoking gun signals thus far, it's kind of threefold. We got the VAERS database was the first red light, or I should say red flag. Mm-hmm. Second was the Department of Defense leaked information. And then the insurance industry actuaries and funeral home industry earnings. It's a big deal. There's a lot going on, and it has a lot of ramifications for the whole insurance industry, which, as I said in part one, I juxtaposed the derivatives market that blew up the world during the great financial crisis, and everyone forgot about that big insurance company that had to get bailed out a couple days after Lehman went down the tubes. It's the same deal. It's like the same thing is happening, but for a different reason. So you really need to be careful out there with your portfolios in the stock market.
We're speaking with Trader Stef, STEF.com. Okay, Stef, so in the past, one of the ways to protect yourself is with hard assets, such as gold and silver. You wear many hats, including a precious metals analyst. Okay, so where are we with gold and silver right now? We've seen gold trending up. We've seen silver trending up. Where are we?
Well, I published some analysis on February 13th through the 15th. It's at the website. The charts are in the article. It's gold and silver rise in the fog of war. And they're not out of the woods yet. I mean, we had some great price action over the last couple of weeks. And that has been primarily driven by the tensions that are building up because of Russia and Ukraine. And that's a whole nother interview, right? We can't go there. But gold had a nice pop up to the first resistance level that was drawn on the chart in that analysis, the 1900 level. But more importantly, it's got to get through the 1980 and then taper positions. It's better to wait for that to be layering any big taper position. Now, buying actual physical bullion, that's a different story. You wait for lows, and we may have been through those, but the way things look right now, it's very hot in southeast Ukraine. The Olympics are over, and China may take advantage of the situation and head for Taiwan because President Xi is not having a real good time in China right now. Now, silver, it's a similar story, but what was important about gold is that we wanted to see an increase in the buy volumes. That happened over the last few weeks. That's important. Plus, even Bloomberg pointed it out. There's some big buyers that are coming in. They were saying a single sovereign buyer. That's not necessarily the case because on the hourly chart, they've been buying since early January every time we had a shallow dip under 1,800. It's not showing up in the futures. It's not showing up in the ETFs. It is showing up on the spot chart. And I always say, look, the spot chart is what it's about. It's Globex, not the COMEX. The COMEX is what it used to be. It's not that it doesn't influence it, but it is now a global, interconnected market. Welcome to the machine. So silver has had a gain, but it's got to get through that 29 and 30 before you layer on large paper capital to take advantage of that Momo move that's going to happen once 30 is taken out. So just be patient with it. It's been a great opportunity to add your silver coins or bullion at retail level, even though you've paid a higher premium because of the supply chain issues. There's issues with it's scarce. Let's just put it that way. It's not that you can't get it, but it's gotten pretty scarce from time to time. So things are interesting right now in the gold and silver market. That's pretty much all I can say about it.
Stef, let's go back to Canada for a second. You having been in the banking industry, the question I have is, why would anyone want to bank in Canada when Trudeau and his little henchwoman Freeland, they have decided that they can confiscate anyone's assets at their whim? In our last minute, why would I want to bank there?
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up, because Edward Dow brought up as part of his thesis that part of the reason for the Great Reset and never letting a good crisis go to waste with the pandemic, there's a debt issue. So they're trying to jackboot the population and get control over everything, because, the debt implosion is happening. There's $300 trillion in global debt. And let's just talk about the United States. Debt to GDP ratio is 120%.